thank you, doctors. With that, let's open it up for some questions. Over to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Jeff. Let's go back to Serena Marshall from Now This.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing this and coming back to me right away. So I just wanted for some clarity here. Are we seeing Delta, we're seeing it be more infectious, but is there evidence with the breakthrough infections that they're more severe in any way? Is there any evidence too that you could talk about with long COVID? We've seen some new data that roughly 30 to 40% of anyone who tests positive have resulted in long COVID as well. And there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to how that's going to play out.
Why don't we start with you, Dr. Fauci?
Well, I think you meant to say Omicron. Yes, Omicron is more transmissible. Everything we know about it from what we're seeing, not only in South Africa, but its distribution throughout the world, and as well as in our own country, we see what's going on in New York City when we're getting beyond double digits of Omicron being the primary variant there in that percentage. With regard to the seriousness of infection, really it's still up in the air right now because there are a lot of confounding issues as to whether or not it is less severe. Certainly looking at what we see, it does not look like it is more severe, but we have to withhold judgment about the severity being less. With regard to long COVID, we don't have enough information on Omicron with regard to long COVID. I would not expect it's going to be any different than we have with Delta, but we'll have to wait to see until we get more experience.
Next question, please.
Let's go to Cheyenne Haslett at ABC News.
Thanks, guys. My first question for Dr. Fauci, you showed data showing how little protection people have after 2 doses a few months after getting it. So should Americans who are not eligible for their booster yet, not 6 months past their last shot, be concerned that they're not well protected against Omicron and get boosted sooner than 6 months? And then my second question on our booster rate still being very low, only 30% of the fully vaccinated. How concerning is that as we head into this larger surge?
Well, let me answer the second one first, and that is the concern. I mean, obviously, that's the reason why I have spent essentially my entire brief presentation on urging people to get boosted, for the simple reason that we do get optimal protection from a boost. You mentioned the lowering of protection, and if you look at some of the slides I showed, a quote, fully vaccinated person after a period of time clearly has a diminution. You still get protection that's reasonably good against hospitalization. We want to make that better with the booster. Whether or not we're going to change what the time interval between your last vaccination and your boost, we always have these on the table for discussion, but right now there's not been a decision on that.
The right way to think about the percent boosted is those eligible. And we've now boosted about 60 million Americans. That's about 40%, 40% of the eligible Americans. Importantly, of those over 65, we're now more than 60%. And that's important because they are the most vulnerable. We are boosting about 1 million people a day. So booster shots are running at 1 million per day. And that is accelerated from where we were, as Dr. Fauci said, stressing the importance of getting the boost when people are eligible. And the president's winter plan really builds momentum here. Pharmacies are expanding appointments and hours and walk-in availability. We're launching, as you know, family vaccination sites where parents can get boosted at the same time that their 5 to 11-year-old might get their first or second shot. Medicare is reaching out to tens of millions of seniors, encouraging them to get boosters. So our message is very clear. Clinically, the docs have said as soon as you're eligible for a booster, get a booster. We have plenty of supply. We now have 90,000 sites, up another 10,000 from a few weeks ago, 90,000 sites that are convenient. And as you know, getting a booster shot is free, and everyone should get their booster shot as soon as possible. Next question.
Let's go to Elizabeth Wise at USA Today.
Elizabeth?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. This would be a question for Dr. Walensky. In light of Omicron's higher transmissibility rate, potentially including people who are vaccinated, is the CDC reconsidering its recommendations that vaccinated people don't need to self-isolate after an exposure to someone who has COVID?
Thank you for that question. We are actively following the science in that area with regard to how the viral burden is, both among vaccinated people and unvaccinated people, and the natural history of that viral burden with regard to isolation. And as that science emerges, we will update our evidence if need be.
Next question.
Let's go to Weijia Jiang at CBS News.
Thank you, Kevin. First, I have a question for Dr. Fauci. I wonder if Omicron is more transmissible just because the nature of the variant, or because the booster and vaccine offer less protection against contracting Omicron compared to other variants, or a mix of both. And for Dr. Walensky, given your new recommendation for students to test to stay, does that extend to adults who are exposed too? That a 14-day quarantine is no longer necessary as long as you test negative? And when you say continue to test negative, how often should kids be getting tested to stay in school after exposure? Thanks.
Dr. Fauci?
Well, with regard to the first question, if you look at the configuration and the constellation of amino acid substitutions which result from mutations on the spike proteins, you would have predicted that this would be a more transmissible virus because of its ability to bind to the receptors on the cells. So you need only look at the virus itself to determine why it is more transmissible, what it actually is.
Dr. Walensky?
With regard to test to stay, so this was a strategy that looked at unvaccinated children because vaccines were not available. Of course, in our school setting, we would encourage that all of our teachers who would be eligible both be vaccinated as well as boosted. With regard to the protocols, there are numerous jurisdictions that are looking at test to stay strategies. Some of them we're testing every day, some of them every other day, and some of them twice a week. So we would say no less frequent than twice a week in order to employ the test to stay protocols. And these were limited to schools, to be clear. So we don't yet have evidence about test to stay protocols in other settings.
Kevin, next question.
Let's go to last question, Sabrina Siddiqui at the Wall Street Journal.
Thank you so much. Just two quick questions. France has imposed travel restrictions on the UK, and several other EU countries are also strengthening their border controls. Are you reconsidering travel from either the UK or the EU, given the COVID outbreaks there? And then secondly, I know we're in a very different place with vaccines and boosters than we were last year, but how would you characterize your message to the American people going into the holidays? Is it safe for families and friends to get together before Christmas? And what is your message to people as we approach the holiday season?
So why don't I take the first question, and then I'll hand it over to Dr. Walensky about the holiday season. Let me start with the fact that the U.S. has strict protocols in place to help protect the American people and stop the spread of the disease as it relates to international travel. Foreign nationals, all foreign nationals coming into the U.S. from a part of the world where the travel is not restricted due to Omicron, must be fully vaccinated and show proof of a negative test. And we've tightened that deadline or that time frame for the negative test to be within 1 day of boarding a flight. The CDC also strongly recommends that everyone get tested 3 to 5 days after they arrive in the US. But as we've done throughout the pandemic, we will continue to follow the science and evaluate the best protocols for international travel, and we'll keep people up to date, and most importantly, the American people safe. Dr. Walensky?
Yeah, as you know, Sabrina, I think we're in a very different place this year than we were last year, and we really do want people to be able to gather and gather safely. We have the tools now to do it, and what we're really saying is please rely on those tools. Get vaccinated. If you're eligible for a boost, get boosted. And importantly, a week before the holidays, indoor mask in these areas that have 90% of our counties have substantial or high transmission. Use the next week to make sure you're practicing those safe prevention mitigation strategies so that when you come together for the holidays, that people have been not exposed to the virus because in fact they've been vaccinated, boosted, and masked. And for that extra reassurance, as we have more disease in this country right now, do a test and make sure that you're negative before you mix and gather in different households.
Okay, well, thank you. We look forward to speaking next week, but I hope everybody has a safe and relaxing weekend. Thank you.